Now, just last year, the president of the University of Idaho was standing at the podium crying and letting the families know that we will do whatever it takes to catch whoever committed these crimes against these 4 University of Idaho students. Now, only a year later, the president of the University of Idaho is basically telling the parents of these students that they can kick rocks. Hey everyone, it's Lucky with Unfiltered Lucky, and we have a lot to talk about today. As you all know, the University of Idaho demolished the crime scene yesterday at 1122 King Road. Now, when I was watching this happen on TV, I started thinking, I don't feel like there was as much attachment to the house, the physical structure on King Road, but I do feel like what I was witnessing was now there will be the what if factor attached to this case. The Gonsalves family knew this, which is why they wanted this house to stand through the trial, in my opinion. Because now people are going to be saying, well, what if? The university chose to demolish the house before the trial, which doesn't look good. It looks like they could be hiding something. And a lot of people, it's going to add to the speculation. And it's going to be what is the big what if factor that's attached to this crime now. Now, the Gonsalves family and the Kernodle family, they wanted this house to stay standing throughout the trial. And there's a good reason for that. So basically, the prosecution and the University of Idaho took a gamble yesterday. They gambled that the potential jury in these Idaho 4 crimes wouldn't want to see the house. The truth is, they don't know that. They don't really know what's going to happen in this trial. So they have no way of knowing if there's going to be a few jury members, maybe one jury member, that wanted to see this house. Because what could happen is basically now that the house isn't there, if the jury is requesting information that can't be provided by their fancy models and, their photo images, that's going to cause a problem. Because not being able to go out and walk the crime scene, it could cause doubt for some jurors. If I was a juror, sitting on this case, I would want to see the crime scene. This isn't just, your rinky-dink crime. This is a quadruple homicide, and another man's life is at stake over this trial. So I myself, I would like to see the crime scene. And, let me know in the comments, if you were a juror sitting on this jury, would you want to see the crime scene? And do you think that that would be important? Now, in my opinion, Ann Taylor agreed to, them demolishing the house because she knows that that's going to create doubt. It's going to create doubt because now you don't have the crime scene there anymore. So, of course, the defense was like, yeah, go ahead, demolish the house. I have a feeling that Ann Taylor's going to capitalize on that during the trial and, focus on the inability for the jury to be able to actually see the crime scene because big money won over justice and the University of Idaho demolished the crime scene. Now, the Gonsalves family and the Kernodle family released this statement, And this was a few days ago, and this was before the crime scene was demolished. Now, at the top of this statement, it says, "Please stop the demolition of the King Road home." Now, the Gonsalves family and the Kernodle family are asking prosecutors and the University of Idaho to please leave this home standing. They may need this home in the trial. Now, I'm not going to talk about the whole statement, but there were a number of questions that the Gonsalves and Kernodle family had. And I'm going to read through these questions because these questions, they tell us a lot, and one thing that they tell us is that the families of these victims have the same questions that we have. There's a lot of this investigation that's not adding up. A lot of this investigation doesn't make sense. So it's not that it doesn't just make sense to us. It doesn't make sense to the families of the victims either. So in this statement, they're asking for some clarification, and they're asking for some clarification from the prosecutor's office. So question number 1 basically says, what were the vantage points of the roommates, Dylan and Bethany? What could they hear from where they were in the house? What could they see? How far away was Dylan when she saw BK, and why didn't he see her? Could the surviving roommates hear a dog barking from the 3rd floor? Could they hear screams? Can you hear those same sounds from the bottom apartment? Now, this is a really good question because, it was stated in the PCA that Dylan saw the suspect. Now, Dylan saw the suspect. Why didn't the suspect see her? The suspect could have been leaving the house quickly. The suspect obviously, he just took the lives of 4 young college students. So it's very possible that he was in a panic and maybe just didn't see Dylan. But that's a very good question about where she's standing in her door and how did she see the suspect and the suspect not see her? So that's a really good question. Also, the screams. Could the roommates hear the screams? In my opinion, I believe that anybody in this house, I believe every single person who was within this house heard everything that went on that night. These, screams, and I hate to even describe them as screams, but noises that people make when they're fighting for their lives are a lot different than party screams. They're sounds that you never forget. They're sounds that you would not mistake for anything else other than violence. I don't believe that 4 people's lives were taken in this house and that the other 2 roommates didn't hear anything. I don't care if they were sleeping. I don't care if they had their headphones on. I don't care what was going on. Everybody in this house heard what was going on, in my opinion. Now, question number 2 talks about the outside of the house. If evidence is presented about BK leaving or watching the house, what windows could he see in from where he was parked? Was he able to view the inside of the house and what was going on from the outside in a car, or if he was walking by? Which would go towards premeditation because it would obviously mean that he planned these crimes. Now, how long did it take for him to walk to his car, and what points of entry could he have gotten into the house? Now, I think that this is, this is one of the main reasons why you would want to leave this house standing. Because, law enforcement believes that Brian Kohberger drove around this house a number of times on the night that these crimes occurred and was stopping at certain locations. So without the house there, you're not going to be able to see what the suspect was looking at because the house is no longer there. The pictures are not going to do this justice. People keep saying, well, they have tons of pictures. They have tons of video. The video and the pictures are not going to, do justice to the real thing. There's a lot of different, facets to this crime scene. And I'm sorry, but the pictures just are not going to do this crime scene any justice. It's not going to be the same. So question number 3, if there is audio evidence, what can you hear standing outside the house and what can you hear inside the house? Now, like I said, I believe that anybody who was inside this house and possibly anybody standing close in close proximity to this house outside, in my opinion, heard what was going on in this house. This was an old house, basically 3 stories stacked on top of each other, wood floors, vents in every single room. I feel like the acoustics in this house carried a lot of sound. I do believe that whoever was in this house heard what was going on. Now, in the PCA, Dylan states that she heard who she thought was Kaylee saying that there's someone here. Well, that's very telling because that tells us that that Dylan knew that she could hear Kaylee from upstairs. They lived there. This was their home. Dylan would have known if she could hear Kaylee's voice from upstairs. And Dylan thought that she heard Kaylee say there's someone here. So I would have to believe that Dylan could hear Kaylee upstairs, and Dylan also believed that she would be able to hear Kaylee from upstairs. Now, question number 4 says, what was Xana's path in the house to pick up the DoorDash? Did she have to walk past different rooms? And could she have walked past BK? Where could he have been hiding? Well, in one of my first videos, we talked about this spare bedroom. This bedroom that was on the first floor. And I do believe that this spare bedroom had something to do with these crimes. Now, this is the bedroom door that Xana would have had to walk right in front of when she picked up her DoorDash order off of the front steps. Xana would have come down the stairs and the front door to the spare bedroom would have been right in front of her. The roommates probably rarely went into that room. They might not have gone into that room that night or even that day. So it's very possible that a suspect or suspects could be hiding in that room and waiting for these roommates. Now, question number 5 talks about all of the entry and exit points in the home. How could you get in and out without anyone seeing you? Were the deck's potential access points, since the decks and landscape features are very close to each other? Now, somebody getting in and out of this house without being seen, in my opinion, wouldn't be that difficult. I mean, this was a party house. It it was very well, a lot of students stated that they had been to this house, they had partied at this house, and that there were a lot of people in and out of this house. So I think if someone were to just blend in, if the suspect was just to look like a college student or college students, I think that would be a pretty good way to go unnoticed around this house, because neighbors are used to seeing college kids walking in and out of this house and around this house. So in my opinion, the way to not be seen would be for the suspect to basically blend in, just look like a college student. Now, as far as the access points on the deck, I don't know. I've looked at the landscape features. I've looked at the trees that are right there on the side of that deck, and it doesn't appear. Now, I'm just looking at photos again, so I can't really tell, but it doesn't really look like there's any trees that would be that close where someone could climb up this tree and then just kind of hop over that banister of the deck. But as I said, I'm looking at pictures, which they will never take the place of the real thing. So, question number 6 is about biological evidence. Is there any biological evidence? Where was it located in the house? Any proximity to the victims? Was there any trail outside of biological evidence and its proximity to the house? So, we've talked about this a lot because it would seem very, very odd that someone could go into this house and brutally take the lives of 4 individuals and then leave this house without leaving any type of trail. That is one of the aspects of this crime that is very confusing, because this was described as a very messy crime scene. There was a lot of body fluid in this crime scene. They said that whoever did this made a mess. But how did they keep it inside the house and keep from trailing it outside of the house when they left the house? That's the big question. I mean, it seems like there would have been some sort of biological evidence around this house, whether it be body fluid or, footprints or hair or, a fight went on inside this house. It was a fight. So it definitely seems as though whoever committed these crimes would have carried the crime scene outside with them. It just doesn't make sense that there wasn't any biological evidence outside of this house. Now, question number 7 asks if the house itself was a target, which was the theory from the beginning, which is the supposed reason the University of Idaho called off their campus-wide warning while BK was still not apprehended. Why was the house a target? What are all of the access and exit points to the property and the driveway configuration for a vehicle to enter, exit, or turn around? Now, as far as we know that the University of Idaho on the 13th, on the day of the crimes, put out a shelter in place. They released a vandal alert to the students and faculty, and they put a shelter in place. Now, only 39 minutes later, they put out another vandal alert, and the University of Idaho lifted that shelter in place after only 39 minutes. So basically, after this really short time, the University of Idaho informed the students that it was safe to go back out and walk around the campus. So that always made me think that maybe they had come upon something in the investigation during that time that would lead them to believe that these crimes were, contained to this house. But in this question, we know that the reason that they lifted that shelter in place is because they believed that the house was the target. Now, to me, it seems as though if the house was the target, and some random person just went into this house and took the lives of 4 occupants in this house, to me, that would make it more dangerous. To me, that would make things more dangerous within the community, because now you have somebody who didn't commit this crime towards someone personally. They just randomly committed this crime because of this house. So to me, that would make things more dangerous for the people in the community, which is strange that they would lift the shelter in place. Now, the last question asks, what are the vantage points of other camera evidence pointed towards the house? Distance, view, lighting, etc. And that's a really good question, because there's a lot of video footage in this investigation. There's a lot of video images in this investigation. Law enforcement has basically, based their entire investigation around this video footage in this community. So what angles the house can be seen from outside cameras would be really important. Now, the house isn't there anymore, so you're never going to see those angles again. But as I said, even with all of this video footage that they have, it's never going to take the place of the real crime scene. The fact that they demolished this crime scene it's mind-blowing that, this crime scene wasn't preserved until the trial. And it also, it also leads me to believe, or, I should say, it makes me wonder if the University of Idaho wasn't possibly meddling in this investigation the entire time. I mean, the University of Idaho, they decided, they said that they got a letter from the prosecution that told them it's okay to go ahead and knock down the house. We're not going to need it anymore. Now, the prosecution doesn't know what's going to happen in this trial. The prosecution has no idea what these jurors are going to want to see as far as evidence. So for the prosecutor to inform the University of Idaho that they're no longer going to need this house, to me is kind of strange, because the prosecutor really does not know that. The prosecutor has no idea. The prosecutor is guessing that they are not going to need this house during the trial. It was a big gamble that the University of Idaho took yesterday, going off of the word of the prosecution. A big gamble. Because, as I said, the biggest problem that could arise from this is that the jury wants to see the house. And without that house being there, that could create some doubt. And that's all really the defense needs, is doubt. So, I thought these were all very good questions, and I thought that this was a very good effort from the families to try to express their feelings to the University of Idaho. But as I've said before, I knew from the very beginning that there was going to be a struggle between the University of Idaho and the victims' families. I knew that there was going to be a struggle, because you're talking about, anybody who has a child in college or has ever had a child in college understands that universities are basically just massive money-making machines. And the University of Idaho is no different. It wouldn't surprise me if they build a parking lot where that house once stood. They could charge students $500 a semester to park there and make more money with that property. Because it's all about the money. It's always been about the money. It's always about the money. Now stay tuned for my next video, and please like and, please subscribe to my channel if you like my content. I really do appreciate it. We'll see you next time.